Okay, I'm Richard James Martin, and I was born on December 23rd, 1944.
Okay.
I'm now part of a vanishing generation of baby boomers at the cutting edge. In fact, I'm not even a baby boomer. I'm just a little too old.
Yeah, you're a little
Just
early.
a few
Yeah, just a
months.
few months.
Yep. So I'm sort of like a, what are you?
Well, baby boomer is a bad person these days.
Is it?
Yeah, we're not looked on very kindly, and you know,
Why?
there's a
We didn't.
good argument to be made that we screwed everything up.
Well, there's also a good argument to be made that we paid the bills for mom and dad, the greatest generation.
Right.
Lucky them.
Yeah.
You know, they had all these industrious kids that worked harder than anybody ever
Yeah.
to pay their bills.
Yep.
And now nobody wants to pay ours.
Yeah.
So
We're SOL.
right, we're okay.
Well, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Look, you and I are still smiling.
Right.
Hey, so yeah, we've got to regroup a little bit because of our technical issue last time, and so we got to go back to the beginning of the story. And
Right.
I think I was asking you where you were living before you moved to Jerome, just before you moved to Jerome, and why you came here.
Well, I was living in San Diego, and that's where I was born. And I worked. I managed a motorcycle dealership, a Honda motorcycle dealership, sold other brands of motorcycles, and as well. And it was a pretty big store, and I was. My main function was to manage the sales and all the store advertising and all of that. I could turn that down
Yeah,
remotely,
yeah.
so that you don't have
Just-
to stretch out your wiring.
I can't reach.
Because we're in the 21st century. I don't know when you're watching this, but we're in the 21st century. Check this out.
Watch, listen.
And sound goes down. Oh, due to our special circumstances of having a bunch of radio equipment jerry-rigged, now I have to get out another controller. Those are called the controllers.
Yeah, for you future people watching this.
Yeah, now that you think of the president as the controller, but no, the president was the president. Maybe in your time he's the controller. If so, I feel sorry for you. All righty. Now,
All right, thank you. You don't have to have it all the way off.
is
I
that
know.
down? Is that down enough?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And we'll have a little soundtrack.
That's called consensus.
Yeah. Hey, the motion is passed.
Motion is passed. Radio is okay. Radio. It's an ancient thing now. Anyway.
So anyway, you were selling motorcycles in San Diego.
Yeah, and I got out of the Marine Corps, and I was
How
really-
long were you a Marine?
6 years.
6 years. What rank?
They didn't even tell me my rank.
They didn't.
They told me I was a lance corporal, and I got my discharge papers and found out I was a corporal.
Okay. Is
Wasn't
that
that?
a demotion or a
No, that's a promotion.
promotion? Nice.
That's a E3 to an E4. It was really nothing for somebody who's been in the service for 6 years, you know. But I wasn't real motivated, and I was in the reserves, so you know, we had our places to hide. But anyway, so I got out of the service, and then I could grow my hair and everything, you know, which I desperately wanted to do after not being a Republican anymore, and I wanted to fit in with those guys, who I thought got more, you know, because they had long hair, and so I took a job in Albuquerque where I was going to manage another motorcycle shop, and that they were going to sponsor me on a race thing and buy my bikes and stuff for me and do all that good stuff. And so I came through Jerome, and I was also fancying myself as some sort of photographer, which I now have determined I'm totally not. But anyway, I just landed here, and I was been taking pictures, and I was sitting in the bar of the spirit room next to this guy, and got to talking to him, and he was a pretty friendly guy and everything. And he invited me to come down and stay where he was staying, which was out in the valley. There's this still secret. It's still pretty much secret waterfall, and it's called Sheep's Head, and it's a tributary of Oak Creek, but it's a year-round spring, and it has a nice pool and everything. So we camped out there all summer, and I stayed here, and then I started meeting people and finding things. So I never made it to Albuquerque.
Oh, yeah, I think you told me that you were supposed to be going there for a job.
Yeah, so I was going to run this motorcycle shop.
You-
Mike's Kawasaki was the name of it.
Ah,
And I don't know if Mike's still there. I looked it up, but it wasn't in business.
and no cell phones back then, so they couldn't call you and find out
No,
where the
and
heck
they
you
never,
were.
and I never showed up.
Ah,
He just disappeared. I didn't call my mom and dad. I didn't tell anybody where I was.
no kidding.
No,
And so,
I was having too much fun.
yeah. So that was the reason for staying? You're just having a good time?
Yeah.
Did you?
Well, I started doing stuff here that I liked. That's where I started learning how to be a carpenter. Was here. I started taking jobs.
Yeah,
you
you
know?
had to find some work.
Right. So I started taking jobs. My first job in the area in the Verde Valley was cutting weeds for this lady who was a real estate agent down by the Cottonwood Cemetery with a sickle. No weed eater.
Sickle.
Yeah. You people in the 22nd century, look up sickle. And, you know what a sickle is.
I do.
Yeah. I doubt if a lot of people do know what sickles are anymore.
Well,
'Cause they use weed eaters
I know
instead.
because of the hammer and sickle.
Well, that's right, you communist, you. Well, the sickle is used for the sickle and
Note to the future. I'm not a
Right.
communist.
note to the future. Hello, future. And but I mean, that's why it was chosen to be part of the symbol for cutting wheat and stuff. You know,
Of course,
of the
yeah.
of the communists.
Yeah.
The hammer was for building things.
Yeah.
The sickle was for
The working people, the
right. So
proletariat.
it's very symbolic.
Indeed. So, so you just decided it was a groovy place and
I just
looked for work.
I just liked it here. I liked the climate. You could run around, go out in Sycamore Canyon or Sheep's Head or whatever, and be naked and go swimming and everything. And nobody was going to bother you and get weird. And it was just a nice place to be.
And what year was this?
This was in 1973,
1973.
right?
Okay. Year I graduated from high school.
The century before your century. And yeah, and so it was. You know, I happened to be on this thing of wanting to know how big the biggest cities are, and I looked up Phoenix the other day. I asked Siri, how big is Phoenix? And the Phoenix metropolitan area is over 5 million people. And when I moved to Arizona in 1973, which would be 46 years ago, the whole state of Arizona had less than 2 million.
Yeah.
And so in that matter of 46 years, the population of the state has increased 2.5 times. And that's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of stress on the state. And that's why you can't go to Sycamore Canyon and get naked anymore. And swim around and jump off the cliffs and generally be youthful and fun.
So,
you know?
So who did you meet when you first came to town? Who'd you hang out with? Who'd you work with? And what were you doing? You say you learned how to be a carpenter. You just got yourself some tools and.
Well, I started hanging out with this guy, Leon Nelson, who's a good friend of mine. He lives in Idaho now. And Leon had a real easy to get along with personality. And he just started asking me to help him do things. And then I started saying, Leon's motto was never say no. And so whenever somebody asked him to do a job, he'd figure out a way to say yes. And so one time we went down and we worked in Clarkdale, and we cut a Fruhoff refrigerated trailer in two. And then we attached it to the back of a house down there. It's still there. Attached it to the back of a house down there, bolted the two halves together in the center, where the two outsides became the center. And then we took a reciprocating saw and cut the wall out that was there, the trailer walls, and made that into a great big huge room, and supported that joint with a beam. And so it kind of blended into those Clarkdale homes that are sort of Spanish in design, not really Spanish, but revival Western design where everything's kind of blocky. And they plastered the whole place at one time, so it has an even plaster coat around it, so you can't really notice it. It's right across from the elementary school, Hartdale Jerome School.
Oh, I'll look for it.
It's on the side street that runs parallel to get back to where they keep the buses and stuff. So Yeah, so I met Leon, and he got me to buy some tools, and we started making things, and I started coming up with items to sell, making things to sell, because
Like
I'm a capitalist.
furniture?
No, at that time, more accessories. I was making mirrors to hang on walls that had shelves on them where you could put a bouquet or you could put a collectible or a tchotchke or something like that on there.
Okay.
And and there was a guy, Verde Valley was just starting to grow, and there was a guy just opened a glass shop in Cottonwood, so I could get he would cut the mirror for me. He would cut the curved shapes. Later, he taught me how to cut curved glass. I know how to do it, but he would do it, and because when you're learning, you'll make a lot of mistakes, and glass is expensive. I'm sure it will be expensive tomorrow, just like it was yesterday, you know. And so I sold a lot of those mirrors, and we formed a bunch of artisans in Jerome, formed a co-op. Did we talk about that on the
Yeah,
first
but
day?
we need to again.
Yeah.
So
Well, we formed a co-op, and the co-op's name was Emiliano's, and I have the sign still
I'm gonna
out
take
there.
a
Yeah,
picture
take a
of it.
picture of it
Yeah.
before because it's really weathering bad, even though it's protected. And there was a lot of craftspeople in Jerome. Jerome was a real crafts happening, and because you could rent places real cheap here or buy places real cheap, mostly rent at that time, and you know the climate was sort of benign, so you didn't have to really worry about being too cold until it turned to the dead of winter, and like it has this year in October, and so Jerome became a sort of a trading spot where people came here to trade things: stone, gold, silver, turquoise, all kinds of precious things, carvings, and became the home of a lot of carvers and craftspeople that made like jewelry, little animal fetishes that they called little fetishes to be little animals about that big that you put on a necklace, real cute, which like is patterned after what the Hopi and the Navajo do in their artwork. And so Jerome started to become basically fairly prosperous because of this business of art and as an art center and as a trading center
Right.
where people knew that they came there, they would find other people trading things.
Who were some of the artisans?
Well, there was a lot of them. The artisans that stood out to me, Benny and Val Aldrich, who lived in the Gulch, Lee Loudon, oh, Kurt Pfeffer, Mimi and Lou Courier. Lou served the town as the mayor several times, town clerk, and Mimi served as a countercultural antagonist to whoever happened to be in office, even if it was her husband. And oh gosh, there were so many. There was Craig. Can't think of his last name now. Did the stained glass, beautiful stained glass. I have a bunch of his work. And Gary Romig was another one. Fern Goldman,
Natalie and
Natalie Barlow,
Ed Dowling.
Ed Dowling. Who else? So there was a lot. I mean, it was right there. There's a lot of people. Chuck Runyon.
And where was Guillermo's?
Guillermo's?
Your co-op.
Oh, no, it's not Guillermo's.
Whoops.
It's Emiliano's.
I mean,
Named after
Emiliano's.
Emiliano Zapata, Mexican revolutionary. Our first store was down across the street from the House of Joy. And the House of Joy was a very famous and nationally and internationally recognized restaurant in Jerome, which probably was one of the businesses that started to establish that Jerome was a place for quality things, because real quality food was served there, and they were open 7 days a week. And then they were open for 3 days a week. And it was reservation only, and you'd have to get reservations 5-6 months in advance to go there. And that was run by John and Mary Dempsey. And so our store was right across the street from them, and they stayed open late, so we would stay open late for their customers, sort of a waiting room. So we sold a lot of stuff. We were able to sell a lot of expensive stuff, which was a first in the crafts world in this area. Because crafts are often thought of as in a denigrating way, and not worth much. Actually, that's BS. But it takes a lot of practice to become a good craftsperson.
Yeah.
So I think, in my opinion, we sort of laid the groundwork for establishing Jerome as a place to do business, and where expensive things could be sold that were of really high grade, not expensive cheap things, but expensive high grade things that were high quality. Every there was a pride in Jerome that everything that came out of the town was really good quality, and you didn't sell cracked rock, and you didn't sell processed turquoise where they pumped it full of epoxy to make it stable.
Right.
Because low grade turquoise crumbles, whereas high grade turquoise is very hard.
Right.
And so
How do you think that ethic came about?
Well, I think that the baby boomers, seriously, I think we were in a transitionary time in America, and we came from an era where things that said "Made in USA" meant they were really good, and people wanted things made in the USA because they knew that they were going to get good quality, and so I think we were raised with that ethic. I mean, you'll hear a lot of discussion about pretty much about everything, and how everything basically was bad. That sort of seems to be the mantra currently. But like, my dad worked for AT&T, and he was a senior manager. He wasn't like a high level executive, but he was definitely one of the people that oversaw the operations of AT&T in Southern California. And AT&T was the main telephone company in the United States and Canada, and they definitely were for excellence in everything that they did. My dad's tools and things that he was issued as a pole climber, when they used to have telephone poles and climb up telephone poles and fix them, fix things on the lines. All those tools and things were beautiful. They were just the highest quality tools you could imagine. You couldn't see the joints between the pivoting points and things. They were so well machined. And they all said, "Made in USA, AT&T" on them. And so that
Well, I guess the reason I ask is because the word on the street, here are all these unwashed, lazy hippies coming into Jerome in the late '60s, '70s, and stuff, and so you wouldn't, from that rumor or observation, albeit maybe not very good one, that they might not have the ethic or the aesthetic to do things of really fine quality.
Well, but I think they were latent.
Okay.
Those are latent ethics, and I was just thinking when you said that there was a lot of critique and criticism of, people would show what they made to other people, and there would be a lot of, well, that's really nice, but look, it's got a crack in it, or that pipestone is known to crumble because that pipestone mine that you got that from was damaged by a dynamite blast that was set incorrectly. And so there was this constantly escalating standard of making better and better stuff out of better and better materials, and experimenting with materials and trying different kinds of things, like that guy that, well, I can't think of his name right now, Bill, who had that reactive metals company,
Yes.
where he developed all these processes of turning different metals, different colors.
Jerome Instrument?
And Jerome Instrument Corporation,
Yeah.
right, which made a new kind of way of prospecting for copper. Now you guys probably go get it off the moon, but no, copper was heart of our community for most of its life. I mean, it is the foundation that Jerome's built on, and this guy invented this way of finding copper that was a much better way than what was contemporary at the time, and that was basically what the process was: is that copper and mercury and all these metals give off gas, and he learned how to measure the gas given off by the mercury, because the mercury is constantly is usually present in copper deposits and silver and gold deposits.
Okay.
And so that's what his instrument was called, a mercury vapor detector.
Huh.
And so he could do prospecting that way. And so a lot of Jerome people that were skilled in using their hands went to work there, like soldering computer boards and things like that when they were handmade instead of being made in, big laboratories and factory laboratories.
Right.
They were being done there at Jerome Instrument by hand, and testing the equipment and selling the equipment and designing the ads, and all that was done in-house here in Jerome. And they had that big building down at the old high school. They had the A building.
The A building.
And they used the whole building.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they had all 3 floors of it.
Wow.
And what that
How
big,
many people employed, you think?
I don't really know. I'm going to say maybe as many as 60.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
at its height. In fact, they ended up having to move to different quarters because down to Clarkdale, where they bought that high school building down there,
Oh, yeah.
because they needed more space and paying the enormous rent on the building in Jerome was. And, everybody was disappointed to see him move down there.
Right.
Okay, I got to take a break. Well, what we were talking about is recycling building materials, and that I've enjoyed harvesting building materials around here, recycling things that I found on the ground, and so on. Like that wall out there, when I had those Mexicans rebuild that wall, they did that with just stuff lying on the side of the hill. They didn't go anywhere to get anything. They had a string, they had a tamper, they had a couple of picks, and they built that whole wall down along the trail there, and they laid all the flagstone part of the trail down there. They rebuilt that. They built a little bridge over a water meter that's down there that you could lift the top off and look at the meter, and so I really like that, to recycle things. I made my whole life out of recycling buildings. This is true.
Yeah.
I never have built a whole building from the ground up. I've always recycled some structure, and even if it ended up being a whole new building, it still was that structure. And I think it's a way to go. And so I had all this beautiful wood stacked up on sawhorses where the living room is now, and it was all open right there. The front of the house was torn down, and I was pulling nails out of it, and I had this special nail pulling tool and a hammer, and it was called a cat's paw. And I just had this system where it was boom, 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 and they were out, And so this was when people were getting paid, $10 an hour was a pretty good wage in the mid 70s. And I figured out that with the cost of the lumber, getting it here from the lumber yard and all that, because that's a factor. Yeah, you bought it, but now you got to get it here. And you had to carry everything to this house. I was making $20 an hour recycling the wood, so hell yes. I'll do that,
Right.
When I'm making double with the normal wages around here to do it. And not only don't have to carry the wood to the site because we're on site.
Right.
And now I have a lot of pain. That's why I'm smoking this.
Yeah.
And
Don't worry, crowd.
pardon me?
Your interviewer is not.
Right. Well, it is calming my stomach down.
That's good.
And the Rolaids.
Well, so did you had things for sale at
Emiliano's, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Just remember Zapata.
Your mirrors?
I had my mirrors. I made cutting boards. I made. Used to turn little bottles on lathes. Were about this big, and I turned little tops. So they were little. We called them weed bottles. You could put like delicate weeds. You could put them in there, and you could put them on the mirror stand. It was very pretty. I mean, they were pretty. They were kind of crude, but they elicited a pleasurable sensation by looking in them. I put stained glass around the top. I'd put the mirror behind the stained glass, so when the light came through the stained glass, it would reflect off the mirror and light the stained glass up.
Oh, nice.
Which was very cool.
Yeah.
It looked real pretty. And I'm not as bright as like that light there, but bright enough that you'd see red. It would be bright, or yellow.
Yeah.
And make sun ray arrangements and stuff like that.
So this was some of the first stuff you got involved in
Yeah,
doing when you
I
moved
made those
here,
with
huh?
jigsaws.
Oh,
By
okay.
1x12s.
Now, did you have a shop or?
Well, our first shop, Leon and my first shop, was in the basement of the Haskins Apartments, which is across the street from the Episcopal Church, which is no doubt still there. I worked on that building a lot. I did a lot. I made all the doors in there. Me and Greg Driver and who was it else? Maybe it was Chuck. I've forgotten. Laid the hardwood floor in there, the whole auditorium floor, and the
Where the Historical Society is
yeah.
today? Oh,
I built
wow.
all those doors.
Oh, my goodness.
And
Those are beautiful.
I did all the baseboards and all the baseboard trim, door jambs, everything in there. I did all that. And I made some mistakes now that I understand carpentry better, but the quality of the workmanship's good. And they're mistakes you can't really see.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we had our shop in the Haskins Apartments, and it was really funny because our table saw was about the height of the windowsill in one of the Haskins bedrooms on the bottom of it. It was in the basement. It wasn't really a basement. It was an apartment, but there was no running water in it. And there was no direct electricity in it. So we lived in there with candles and we poured water in the toilet, out of a bucket that we would get from up above. And, oh, God, that was owned by, oh, God. Can't think of their name now that owned the Spirit Room right this second. I'll remember it.
The Conlins?
No, before Conlins.
Okay.
What was his name? Just can't think of it. It's in, I worked for him. I used to clean the bathrooms there. That was a disgusting job at the Spirit Room,
Yeah.
And
Still is.
smelled like urine in there all the time, no matter what.
Yeah.
It smelled bad, like gnarly.
So.
I don't think there was even a fan in there.
No. So.
Watts, Terry Watt,
Oh, okay.
and Bill Watt. Bill Watt was his dad. Bill owned the place at that time. And
So
he told us no girls down there, and I had a girlfriend down there one morning, and right when we were kind of like, don't bother me, he comes roaring down the stairs, yelling, "I told you not to have any women here." Oh my God. What a freak out that was.
So there was plenty of work in town.
If you wanted it, if you went and asked for it, and you were willing to work cheap, there was plenty of work. They didn't, there was those dirty hippies, like you say, we don't want them around. I wish they'd go away. Why did they come here?
Right.
And
So did you have experiences in that regard when you first moved here? I'm curious. So you didn't have any trouble with the old timers because you were responsible and were working. Would that be a fair characterization?
well, yeah. I was personally irresponsible, but at work-wise, I was very responsible, and I always had a work ethic, and I worked all the time.
Sounds like me.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. I liked it. I'm happy with it,
And where were you living at that time?
Well, out there at Sheepshead, but a lot of times I come into Jerome. I had a motorcycle, Honda 750. It was very beautiful, and 4-cylinder, the first series, and that's for the future. And they can go look them up. And so I would ride back and forth to Jerome
Oh,
and hang out or try to find some work.
so you were
Do
still
something.
camping out.
I was
Okay.
camping out a lot. I had a lot of camping spots around town, but we also used to go up to the top of not Mingus Mountain, but Woodchute Mountain up here to the campground, Potato Patch,
Yeah.
where there's the most beautiful field of wild irises every springtime there. Have you ever seen
Yes.
that in bloom? Oh
I
my
have.
God.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And it's a treasure, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that'll be in the Arizona Republic someday,
I'm sure.
or on Channel 10.
If it hasn't already.
If it hasn't, thousands of people will come up here to see the irises bloom. Oh, please God. And so,
So what kind of work were you doing? Just
like I said, cutting weeds,
repair-
washing dishes.
repairs on houses?
Washing dishes, I disassembled a walk-in freezer at the Union Market about a block and a half from here, up there on the highway on Main Street. That yellow mark at Lonnie's house
Yes.
had a big walnut. Yes, real genuine walnut walk-in freezer with cork walls lined with walnut. I think
Wow.
no, or maybe they were no, they were lined because you don't want the cork would absorb the smell of the meat, wouldn't it? Even though before it froze.
Right.
And I think it was lined inside and it had these big glass doors, and you used to you not glass doors, glass windows. They were about that big, and you could go up and look in the windows and see the meat hanging there. Because like the guy'd buy a cow and or harvest a cow and have it hanging in there and go make cuts off of it and stuff.
Okay.
That's how it was. It had a real butcher shop right there, and it had hooks that hung across. I didn't tell you this story. This is a new one. It had hooks that hung across the top of the wall, and they hung meat, and they would like hang meat and rabbits and things like that from those hooks that were on the wall, and you'd come in and buy them fresh.
You still in 1973? Four?
No, no, no,
Oh, oh.
no. This store had been closed probably since the late 40s.
Okay.
That would be a very interesting topic to find out when the neighborhood grocery store is closed. You could do that if you could get a hold of the Selnas before they die. You could find the answer to that question. Maybe you should interview them
I think I will.
because he grew up. Ray grew up here,
Right.
and he was contemporary with us, but he wasn't a hippie. But I think he probably dabbled in the culture here a little bit. I don't know. I never met him.
So to speak.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you? You
Yeah.
know, I mean, Jerome was happening, and everybody knew it all over the Verde Valley. That's kind of why they hated it, and because it was the first place to happen in the Verde Valley. It's where life sprung forth. Sedona was still quite agricultural, and Sedona was really beautiful. It was just really beautiful. It still is. But
Well,
it's just so jam packed with homes.
yes, and the ugly, cheap architecture along Main Street. It just.
Yes, some of the homes are real pretty. People are inspired to
Oh,
build
there's
pretty
some.
houses.
I've worked on some of them out there.
Have you?
There's some pretty amazing places these days.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. Where only the privileged could live. But oh well.
Yeah.
We'll go look.
The
I don't want to
perfect,
pay the
perfect,
taxes.
perfect
anyway.
views, splendid mountain sides.
Yes.
But let's get back to
Jerome.
Jerome.
All right.
So there was a real sense in the Verde Valley that Jerome was happening because there was music, there was art, there was kind of a freer, partier atmosphere.
Right. And the hippies were running all over the valley and swimming everywhere naked and partying and everything, and it was everything they thought it was, but it wasn't bad. It was good.
Right.
Those people thought it was bad.
Well, yeah, witches and warlocks up there.
Yeah, that's right. Celts gone crazy, and so yeah, so it was all those fun things that you read about. That it was true. It all happened, and people don't want to talk about it now. They're afraid to talk about it.
Right.
They are. I'm afraid to tell a lot of stories. There's a lot of stories I just would not tell about things that we did, adventures and things that, as groups of people we would do. And, like large numbers of people going off into the wilderness and taking LSD. And not large numbers of people, 5 or 6 people at a time.
Okay.
In sweat lodges and things like that people did. And people were definitely trying to pursue an alternative, including the craftsmanship. See, I brought it full circle.
Right on.
And but that's true. That everybody was looking. I mean, that's the feeling that you had. Everybody was looking. Might have been a little goony, but everybody was looking and trying out new things, and a lot of really wonderful things happened because of it. And that's how we got. That's how we worked our way into the town. But yeah, we partied hard, but a lot of us worked really hard. We did a lot of hard, dirty things that nobody would want to do, I got Rocky Mountain fever working underneath a house here. The Mods, it's now the Jerome Ghost Town Inn.
Okay.
And I was helping rebuild the foundation there, and I was crawling on my back under that building. It didn't bother me at that time. Well, when you think these 100-year-old houses like you have here in Jerome, well, they're now much older than that. And most of them had just single sheeted floors. They didn't have double floors. and it was Doug fir, tongue and groove, and it was beautiful. It makes beautiful finished floors, as you well know, some of the prettiest. And so that would just be the sole floor. Well, dust would sift through there. The finest dust could work its way through and down. And so underneath these houses, there would be these piles of dust that you would have to work in, bad, young, invincible, nothing's ever going to hurt me. I conquer all. This really stupid
Yeah.
attitude, God.
I've done that a lot with paint. But
I bet, yeah, painting probably with no mask.
yeah.
I did finishing in my cabinet shop, no masks, with
Right.
brush, all brush finishes.
Oh boy.
And man, that
With lacquer?
lacquer and polyurethane and oils.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of oil and wax and
Yeah.
stuff like that too. I liked oil and wax, although you're working with linseed oil, cooked linseed oil based products on your hands and everything.
Yeah.
No gloves.
Yeah. I know the story.
Yeah.
Well, so when did you move up to Jerome from your camp spot?
The winter of '73.
So okay. So what we've covered so far was just
Summer. First summer.
Man,
May 29th to winter.
we got to move faster.
Well, those are the formative years.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So you got
And-
an apartment up here, or did you?
No, we lived
Buy
down there
something.
in the Haskins.
Oh,
Down there
you-
with our
in
table
your
saw.
shop? No kidding.
With our table saw.
Did you pay any rent?
No.
Well, perfect.
Right.
But no running water.
No. And what I started to tell you is the table saw was the same height as the windowsill, so we used to push our rip-offs. We'd make long rips, and there was the door behind the table saw, so you could bring the board in through the door in the window, and you could run it through the table saw and push it out the other window. And we'd have somebody out there grabbing it, stand out there grabbing it, because we all work kind of teamwork style. At that, a lot of people would work, and we'd work together and share the money because we were cosmic.
Cosmic.
Yeah, that's my boss calling me.
Uh-oh.
Oh, it's telling me I'm a pussy. And cell phones, they consumed our generation and many generations. And we loved them, and they were treasures. And people who say things like, well, that's all they did. They just look at their cell phone. They don't have any friends. That's bullshit. I think it expands communication, personally.
Well, it does. Just that they're tracking us and recording everything. But I digress.
Why in God's name would they? But anyway.
Control, Richard. Control.
Control.
That's why you were in Jerome, to escape control.
That's right. Partially.
Yeah. An entrepreneur you were.
I was an entrepreneur, right. I couldn't have done entrepreneurship in the city because it's too expensive. I mean, I tried to buy a motorcycle shop. I loved motorcycles. I love machines and diddling with them. And I have a natural talent for that too. I can understand how they work, and I can just fix things. I'm not like a professional guy, but I could have been a professional guy
Right.
at some point.
Now, you said later you had your shop where the old fire station was, and
Yes.
now where Grapes is.
Yes.
When did you move into that?
Moved in there from the Haskins in 1974. There was a gas station there, a Shell gas station, and it closed and was empty. And it was owned by the mining company. And next to it was the bus. Have you ever heard about the bus? I saw somebody make mention of it on Facebook the other day. There was a red and yellow bus that was next to where Grapes is now, where the pottery shop is. And those three stores, they have their little complex, Simple Complex, I think it's called.
Right.
They went together and they built that building. It was a very cool thing. And so there was the gas station. It was just sitting there empty. So I guess I asked Phelps Dodge if we could rent it for $50 a month. John McMillan. John McMillan is a legendary character that doesn't get any credit for being the colorful and important person on the Jerome scene that he was.
Was he the fellow that knew about the water system?
No, that's Duke.
Oh, okay.
That's Arthur R. Duke Canal. John McMillan grew up here. His family were morticians here, and they had a furniture store here and in Winslow, and they had mortuaries here and in Winslow. And they had a nice furniture store across from the old town hall, across from the stairs coming down, right there on that corner that's a parking lot now. They had a really nice looking store. Look up that building. It's very handsome. It's too bad it's not there. The town should allow it to be rebuilt, in fact. It would add so much to the business district feeling. And but they're not that progressive. So John, his dad was a locomotive engineer on the narrow gauge and the standard gauge, the only one that worked both railroads coming into town. So these people go way back. It's like Leo Sullivan, same thing. His parents came here and built my building and built that hotel down there where the kaleidoscope shop is, and so on. So when we die, those people are gone. They'll never be remembered.
Yeah.
And I think I think in a way it's really too bad, because Jerome is in its own little way kind of epic, you know, and it is. I mean, it was the site of this giant copper mine that was once one of the dominant copper mines in the whole world, and money was made from here that's legendary. Copper money, you know, Senator Clark, what's her name, the daughter that just died at 104, that you know who I mean.
I do. I can't
Think of
remember
her
her
name right now.
Yeah.
Right, she has that unusual French name, and so then the struggles that it went through after its role in World War II as an old fading mining town that was busily churning out copper for the war effort, you know, at a high rate, working real hard but quiet. And you see pictures from that era, and there's just a few cars on the streets and everything, you know. The business district is real quiet, but everything's open. And so then the epic of, you know, when it lay fallow and there was just 50 to 100 people here, 150 people probably is what Diane Rappaport estimated in her book. But they were here, and they saved the place. They gave it a focus. Let's get in the ghost business, and let's sell this as the most unusual town in America, which it very well has bragging rights in that regard. Don't you think?
Oh, yes.
You know, I mean, there's other radical towns too, but Jerome is one of those, one of the elite radical towns. And then came the blooming of the arts and the hippies and everything that all moved here, and you know, created a homegrown industry and took over the town government and became everything, and finally became the town, because that's the progression of life. As the old people pass away, the young people become the old, and they too pass, and so comes the children, you know, and it's very cool. But what happens is that the towns get this size and they die out because they can't sustain themselves. There's not enough crop of children to sustain the town. And there's no reason to move there because there's no really good paying jobs. And that time when Americans had enough money to be able to have a second or third home is
Those are gone.
going away now.
Well,
know?
you had room to expand when you got here in '73.
Yeah.
It was a place, and to have kids.
Right. And to have kids, it was great. Having kids here this was a great place for kids.
Where were we? You had just moved into what was the
garage.
old gas station.
The old gas station, the Shell station.
And so that was just your second year. So you already had a business on Main Street.
I did. That's right. I never thought of that before. I never thought of that. It's the first time. Yep, we did. Leon kept his International Harvester stake bed down there. It was painted metallic green with pinstripes and duals on each side on the rear, and big industrial wheels. It was
Now, were you anywhere near to getting involved in politics at this time?
Yeah, I was. That's right, I was.
Even in your second year here?
Yeah, because, well, the thing was, see, we were there on Main Street. I was always there because I was making products and they sold good at the cooperative Emiliano's. They sold well. I was making enough money to support myself and have food and beer and buy tools. It's basically what I did. I didn't drink much beer. I mean, I did, but you know. But basically, I'd spend my money on tools and things like that. And so, yeah, so there we were on Main Street, right in the middle of it happening, right across from the post office. Every person in town saw us working because we left the front doors open on it all the time. And we had this wood stove going. So you could come and stand by the wood stove and we could work.
Now, those were garage doors, right?
Yeah,
So
they
you
were
were
garage doors.
really wide
vertical,
open.
Wide open. Vertical garage doors. And in the wintertime, we'd close them, but we'd have the fire going in there. And we had this big barrel wood stove that was made by the mine. And it sort of would heat the place up. Glue would turn white, yellow glue, like Tide. And so that's not good, you know, that's a little cold.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so that's how the town kind of got to know us. And I made furniture for, I told you about Tom Brown. Was that in the first tape?
I think so, yeah.
Councilman Tom Brown. Okay, good. Because I don't want him to be left out of town history. If any of this ever survives, he's a guy that deserves to survive.
Well, tell it again, just in
Okay,
case.
well, Tom was an ultra nice guy. And
He was an old-timer?
no, he was young like us, only
Oh,
he
okay.
was real straight. And he worked for Yavapai College over in Prescott. And he lived over here. He had that building down next to the Central Hotel that Leon built the addition on the front of it, that it was called a restaurant called the Speakeasy. And he wanted to bring local performers. He wanted to do everything local, him and his wife Karen. She was very cool too. And she worked at Yavapai College. And so he wanted to have everything local craft, local musicians, local tables. I made all the tables for his restaurant. I made like 13 of these real complex solid oak tables that survive forever. It's probably they're out there somewhere. Where are you? And he did it, and it was good, and it was a really fun place, and it was pretty successful. And him and his wife Karen were flying back from someplace, maybe San Diego, and screwed up and flew their plane into the cliffs at Sedona, I believe, and they were both killed.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was the one who tried to bring Yavapai College here. He wanted the college to buy the high school when it was for sale for nothing. And he wanted to establish it as a premier arts and crafts campus, and the whole thing be devoted to arts and crafts. And that is how that became known as an arts complex down there. Partially, I mean, because Tom Brown put all this huge amount of energy. I mean, it was discussed in the newspaper, and it was discussed over in Yavapai County Board of Trustees and everything. They were very close to doing it. And I think the property powers to be probably said, hell no, you should move down here. Because growth occurs around the college campus. What would have happened is Jerome would have turned into a small college town. It would have been a real trip. It actually was a great vision.
Yeah.
It was a great vision.
I
you
like
know? Yeah. Because because a lot of the teachers would have lived here. Because they could walk to school, just like they did when Jerome. It was too bad. Too bad it didn't happen. Another plan for that place was to make it into a place like the Haven, but the Verde Valley's population wasn't big enough to support that complex.
Okay.
You know, as now, it's still too big. If you took all the rest homes in the Verde Valley and put them together, they wouldn't equal the square footage of that place.
Right.
Even close, I wouldn't think.
Right.
And maybe one floor of the A building. And he said they're big, and so there was but that was Tom Brown's dream and his wife's dream. They shared the dream, and they tried to make it happen. And they opened this very nice restaurant that was a lot of fun to go to. The food was good.
And that was here in town?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
right there next to the Central Hotel.
All right.
On this side of it, where there's a little store I told you about. It was Fern's store, and it's a store right now. I don't know what it is, between the Jerome Market and the Central Hotel.
Okay.
Is that building, that tall building, and the bookstore's at the top floor of it.
Right.
And he used to rent that, and then the kitchen was on the next floor, and the dining room was on.
Oh, okay. This is, Roberto's building now.
Yes, it's Roberto's building, correct. That's
Right.
the history of how it got that way, and how it got its present way.
Okay.
Who knows? It may be reconfigured at another time. But the floors are small where the eating area was. You had to walk around and you look down the stairs. So he'd put a singer up in on one of the floors. I'm not sure which floor, and then have them sing and entertain the whole place. And one of the floors went back into the building a ways.
Yes.
Had tables that went back in a ways.
I've been in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
And
And the name of the restaurant again?
the speakeasy, it says that in stained glass on the wall. If you look up there, it's covered with glass, but it says the speakeasy.
Okay.
And that has a light in it. And when the restaurant was open, that lit up. It was cool. Really cool.
So this was 74, 75?
And this is 76, 77.
Okay.
So he started courting me to do something for the town in 75 or 76. I can't remember. Whenever they started the planning and zoning, he came to me and asked me to be on the board, the
Right.
planning and zoning board, so I would serve on it. They were going to form, the council wanted to form a planning and zoning committee, and so they named me to be the chairman of it.
So
And-
this was Jerome starting to grow again. And
Yes,
so
this
we
is
need,
Jerome
we
deciding
need
that-
planning and zoning.
Well, yeah, and if you have planning and zoning, you only need it in towns that are growing or staying the same. You don't need it in towns that are declining so much. So if a town's under pressure to grow, like Jerome was at that time, and it is now, heavy pressure for it to grow, it's sort of happening right now. They're going to change a neighborhood in town to R2 from R1 down there by Dundee.
Right.
And that's good because there's a lot of houses down there that could easily be two, and we need living units in town.
Yeah, we
or
do.
we're going to die as a town. We're just going to become a town that people go to work in and shop, and then everybody leaves. And Uptown Jerome has a certain character that's different than most towns because it has people living in the main business district. And I'm proud to have added to that by adding apartments in that could be lived into. And so all those apartments you got about 10 or 12 apartments right in the downtown of Jerome.
Yes.
And so people live there, and so they're there, and it gives a different feeling to everything. Doesn't feel abandoned and lonely. It feels
After 5.
warm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels nice. It has
Yeah.
a nice feeling uptown.
Yes.
And so so that's what planning and zoning came about. And as we learned, John Tudan, who was I think the vice chairman, I don't remember. You can look in the book. He once said, the zoning ordinance is not a document that's used to keep things the same, which is how it's often misinterpreted as being. The zoning ordinance is a document that's designed to organize and facilitate change, and that's exactly what it is. It's a document that's based upon a collection of information that tells you the character of a community in a lot of ways, and then you so that you can start to recognize what it is that you have to preserve, and instead of making a mistake and putting your emphasis in some other area. And
Had you ever done anything like this before?
planning and zoning?
Yeah.
No, but I've had a lot of leadership positions in my life. It's starting, when I went to college and I was president of my fraternity when I was 19, and so that's where that's what I got out of college. The fraternity taught me everything.
How to run a meeting.
How to run meetings and how to deal with real problems. I was the house manager also, and I had to make sure that I had a house mother that worked there and cooked there every day for 6 days a week, and had tax, Social Security payments and milk bills and escrow payment. Property payments for the $1,200 a month in
Oh, wow.
1964 for
You're running a small business.
Yeah, I was, and that's how I learned how to run businesses.
Okay.
Not by going. I was at the college, attending the college, but my training that on the job was in a fraternity. I think fraternities are terribly misunderstood. Yeah, there was the ones that fuck up. We fucked up. Every fraternity fucks up, but a lot of people came out of those fraternities and learned a lot of things about working with people and being successful. And, you know,
Which one was it?
mine, Teeks, Tau Kappa Epsilon,
Okay.
and Gamma Lambda chapter, San Diego State. It was an old chapter. It's been disbanded because of getting in trouble.
So those skills came in handy when you were tasked to. Were you the head of the planning and zoning?
I was the chairman of it. Yes.
Wow. Was that an elected position, or did someone appoint? Did Tom appoint you?
I think the town. I don't know. I don't remember honestly.
Okay.
I'm thinking the town council appointed me, and I didn't want to do it. I said I don't want to do that, you know. And I mean, I remember the fraternity was intensive for me. I worked really hard in that. I had a lot of tasks to do every day that were important. Because you know, we had 25 guys living there,
Right.
and oh man, I also stretched the one muscle down here. Oh, I'm a bag of pain, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Do you want to stop?
No.
Well,
I'm wiggling and getting wiggly.
well, let's go back to.
Okay, so we're
So
planning
you're-
and zoning.
Yeah, planning and zoning. And what was the council like at that time? Was it
The council- I'm
old
trying to-
timers or a mix of new and old?
It was a mix of the old, leaning toward the middle timers, the ones before the hippies, but after the oldies.
Okay.
And
So there was no planning and zoning before this.
no, nothing. The town had no idea. The only thing that, I mean, I think what the town mainly thought about its future, the people that preceded us, not the people that preceded the middle timers. The middle timers, they had a dream too, you know, which we sort of slurped up, but because we overwhelmed them. I'm trying to. We're okay.
Well, you had just been appointed chairman of the
Right.
of the planning and zoning. It was the first planning and zoning
That they ever had.
effort.
Right. And they told us what they wanted, you know, which is, of course, they would do that. They were the town council. And they told us they wanted something. Why don't you just go take a look at Scottsdale and see how it's done? You know, it's a town with a lot of tourism. So, yeah, you know, go look at Scottsdale's, I don't know, la la la. So we got in there was 26 of us. And I think this is very interesting, actually. This is my first experience of working with a consensus-built system of doing things where you used a what do you call a person who
Facilitator.
facilitator? Yes. My first facilitated types of meetings. When I was in the fraternity, I conducted the meetings, and I called on the treasurer, and I called on the secretary, and you know, on the building guy, and all of that. And no, in this we built a consensus, and so we went in there and we thought, get a ordinance from Scottsdale. That's ridiculous. You know, we're going to have to do in the consensus of the 26 people. We're going to have to do this ourselves, and we're going to start over. Well, concurrently at that time, Northern Arizona Council of Governments had just decided that they were going to embrace the facilitation process, and so they hired a guy named Matt Winkle to be the facilitator. And Matt was a really good guy. He had a great sense of humor. And it was great training for him, I guarantee you. And he came down every 2 weeks, and he had taken all of our work and he had organized it. They use easels, and so they go up there and you say, all right, Mike, you think this should be the subject of this video. And you, Richard, you think this should be the subject of the video. Now, what do we work, what's in common with what we think here? Oh, we agree that we want it to be about Jerome. Okay, so that's basically what you do when you start. You build trust by reaching mutual decisions, and so this is how government should be run, in my opinion. And because when you bring consensus together, you build strength, and you build strength to go to the right way. I mean, maybe not so. Maybe you could go bad too, but I learned to trust you, you learned to trust me, we can make a decision. And so that's what the Planning and Zoning Board did. They took off, They wrote their own ordinance, every word of it. Don't ever believe that any of that was ripped off out of other ordinances. Like that's a commonly promulgated around town, and that is not true. No way. We wrote the whole ordinance. And yeah, there's suggested wordings available in lots of government books about, building governments and operating governments.
Sure.
And we looked at those, we'd be stupid. We didn't invent the process. But there's nothing taken from the city of Phoenix or some other town. We worked with Bisbee a bit, and we talked to them a bit about their issues. And we worked with Park City, Utah. We talked to them about their issues. All three towns have common issues, mainly safety issues, access, ingress, and egress during emergencies, structures built of highly flammable materials, so on. So you see, so that's what when we talk about common ground, we start talking about that's the things we pull together. And we realize that we share these things, so we might be able to have mutual results. And, not mutual results, it's not a good way of putting it, but we might be able to have a consensus on what's the best way to go. And then we agree, we talked it out. We discarded this idea because of this disadvantage, or we discarded this idea because of this disadvantage. So we came to see another rule about Jerome that's really important. And that is that there is no building time period here. So there's no real urgency as a historical community to prevent things from changing. We may want to make efforts to conserve what already exists, but we can allow interpretation of that, interpretation of the contemporary lifestyle. We're not building a replica city. We are a living little city. And so we're going to make everybody build this town to be a certain way, or are we, things that governed building here after surveying every building in town. Jerome took a picture of every single building, all sides of every building. And that's at the Historical Society, I believe. That should be digitized.
The buildings or the homes as well?
All buildings.
Everything.
Homes, business buildings, shacks, outhouses, whatever. Pig pens, all of it. We inventoried the whole city. And that was a real task. Jane Moore and Mary Mark Armstrong and several other people went out and getting the neighbors to say, okay, you can take a picture of my house. That's part of the story. And so they did that, and we came to see. We learned a lot about this town, and we learned a lot of things that people didn't know about the town. We were able to unearth, in looking into the history of various buildings. And so we learned how to run we basically learned how to run the town through that effort. What's happening?
It's okay.
Okay. We basically learned how to run the town by delving into all of these aspects of it, this whole crop of people. And so, I ran for office and I lost. And I was number 6 out of 5. And there was 11, I think, on the ballot. That was my first time. And I ran in 1976. And then I ran in 1978 and I won, and I was 3rd out of 5. And then Frank Ebert was the president.
Wait a minute. Didn't you tell me that you got on the council first because someone...
No.
Resigned?
No. I did not. I thought I should have because I was the 6th vote getter, but they put the 9th vote getter in.
Oh, no kidding.
To take the place of the mayor who resigned.
Oh, excuse me. I had
in that
wrong.
council.
Okay.
Which isn't that? I mean,
kinda,
whatever.
Yeah.
It's long gone. And anyway, yeah. I got lost. We were in planning and zoning, then we turned to
sorry about
elections.
That. So you were telling me that the next election came around, you ran
again. Then I ran, and I was 3rd on that. And then Mayor 1, Frank, quit, and Mayor 2, Barbara Hogan, she quit. She was the number 2 vote getter. So what we would do, the tradition in Jerome is you just whoever gets the most votes is the mayor. If they quit, then the second vote getter moves up, and
Right.
so on down the line. And
They quit as mayor or quit entirely as a
council, quit the
council?
council
Okay.
entirely.
Okay.
Not only step down as mayor, but they quit the council.
Gotcha.
So, so then that's how I became mayor
Yeah.
of the town.
And what were your challenges when you became mayor? What was...
Well, there was $300 in the bank, and we had to pay everybody on Friday, and we had 8 employees.
That's not going to work.
No, so I had to get the town clerk to do extreme things, like go over to the bar and start hitting people up that were heavy-duty boozers, but behind on their water bills. They're $11 a month water bills. Woohoo! Even then, woohoo! And, so she did it. She went over there. You can be sitting in here drinking beer. You can pay your water bill. We have to pay the town crew. We have to do this and we have to do that and we have to have this money to get. Yeah, we got in their face, and then there was the time period where I never really understood bankruptcy, the concept of bankruptcy, because what we did is we basically went bankrupt during this period of time, and so what we did, I just loved Betty Mae Peterson from Kingman. Betty was a Latino lady, good size, real pretty, well-spoken, literate, had run a printing plant for 12 years, had their own design, they did job printing. That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And so she was really good. So we would sit down there, me and Betty, and we would go over all the bills and we would stack them up. And these are the ones that are going to be paid. It was just like, being in bankruptcy.
Right.
These are the ones that can be last. These, this circumstances, this has been so long to pay this. And I always cite, I was in there one day working because I had my own desk there. And the town hall when it was in Hotel Jerome. Got a phone call from Elmer Hubbard, the Standard Oil distributor in Flagstaff. And you remember in the old days when the gasoline would come in on train cars and they would put it in trucks and bring it to towns like Jerome. And that's what Elmer Hubbard was. He was a Standard Oil jobber, and we had a pump at the town yard. And so they would do our tank. And so our employees were stealing gas and, blah, blah. But he called up and he said, "You guys owe," and we owed him a lot of money at that time. It was like maybe $1,000. Well, Betty and I had been writing checks, and Elmer Hubbard's bill had come up before he called me. And I said, well, let's pay him $500. And so we agreed that we could pay him $500, in the scheme of things. And so when Elmer called, I said, that's really interesting. We just wrote you a check, and I apologized for being late. And I said, we're sending you a check for $500. That's all the money we have that we can afford to send to you. And I think we owed him $1,500. We paid him in 3 $500 payments. And so he said, well, I'm going to tell you that I have to shut off your gasoline. And I said, well, I understand that. I accept that you have to shut off our gasoline. The bill is too much. It's too high. $1,500 bill to the town of Jerome at that time was big. And so he sort of apologized and hung up and everything. We've been his customer for years. Well, about 10 minutes later, he called me back. And he said, I've been thinking. And he said, what are your cops going to do? And I said, well, I guess they're just going to have to walk around town. We'll have to reduce the number of patrols and we'll have them walk around town. I said, that'll be fine. That'll work good, which it would have. And it would have just been different being a cop. And it would have had a good presence, I was okay with it. And he said, well, I just can't let that happen. So we worked out a payment plan and he sent us more gasoline. But that's how we did it.
So that's your first year on the job as mayor.
Yeah, I was in my first or second year, yeah.
Okay.
And no, it was my first year. The town was desperate then. And we had to raise the water bills. We had to do drastic things. I think we raised the water bills 3 or 4 times over the time I was on town councils. and they hadn't ever been raised. I mean, you know, in 1973, $11 for a water bill, that was a pittance.
Yes.
It was just a pittance, and it was nothing. And so
What was
that
your
was water, sewer, and trash. $11.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
And then
today.
we like raised it to $15.50 or something. You know, we raised it $3,
And everyone was pissed.
everybody was mad. Yeah, and called us and said mean things and everything. But then they got over it, and pretty soon, you know, we just did that, and we were very disciplined, and we did that, and pretty soon the town started coming out of poverty.
What were your other sources of income?
The town has no other sources of income other than its businesses: water, sewer, trash, rentals.
Really?
Yeah.
How about
Well, it has grants,
sales tax?
sales tax, property tax, but I mean those traditional.
And
The
you
town
got-
has no special districts,
right.
and
But you would get monthly checks from sales and property.
we had no sales tax then.
Oh no
we
kidding!
put the sales tax in.
You kind of had to.
We did. We had to have more money. We had to sit down and figure out how much more money we had to have. That's how we did it. I mean, we couldn't cover the jobs. You know, like a police department's supposed to cover the town 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There needs to be a policeman on duty. And you know, when we were hippies, we scoffed at that. But then when we got into the town government and we saw how it was run and everything, we saw that, oh, hey, you know, we're fools, and this has to be this way. You know, because for one thing, we could only hire 3 guys, and that's supposed to cover the town for 24 hours. That's ridiculous. That's 7 days a week. And so if one of them quits, then you only have 2 guys to cover it. So then you get into paying overtime, time and a half, and woo, you start spending way more money than you spend having a regular employee.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we had to, the argument was 2 cops or 3 cops. And, you know, I was on the 3 cop side because I would go into the police station. I made a point of going in there every day for several weeks and hanging out and watching what they were doing and learning about what goes on in there and being shown the paperwork and everything. And so I saw that, you know, it's inconvenient that we have to have police departments, but we do because people get hurt and neighbors fight and people get drunk and all these things happen, and so you have to do that. That's one of the things you do as a community.
So you kind of.
It's one of the communist things you do.
One of the communist things. Well, this was a would you say a growing up process for Jerome?
Yeah, not everybody accepted these changes. Not every one of the hipsters accepted the changes. Some of them think that, you know, one part of the hipsters is growing up rotten, but and they're pure, or whoever it happens to be. But yeah, I think it's a growing up process. It's a process of maturing as you get old. Things start taking on, you know, one thing I don't know. I find most older people really nice, and they want to speak and to each other and so on. I had a lady the other day. I was going someplace with the walker, and she said something about, you just got to keep on going, and you know, and she was old, you know, and I said, yep, you do. That's what I got to do. I just got to keep on going. And
Well, how old were you when you
got here.
No, when you were mayor. Like this.
I was 27 when I got here, so 1978, I would have been 78. I was born in 44.
32.
34.
You're 34. Okay.
I was 34. Yeah,
Wow, and mayor of a town.
and mayor of the town. Yeah.
Did you pinch yourself?
With my good fortune. It was a great job. I enjoyed the job. You know, there was times when I hated it and I was really depressed and I was really down and I was kicking things and whining to all my friends and everything. But in the long run, it was really a good thing to have done. It's a really valuable experience. It covers you know, it's hands-on, man, running a town. We don't have no printing press downstairs. We're not cranking out the money, man. We got to actually budget the town and make it work and stay within the budget. And the people have to not be demanding or expecting more than the town could provide. You have to teach them what the level. the town can provide things. And what is it that you want? You know, we didn't want much. The hippies didn't want much. We weren't a big burden on the community when we got here, and we also pitched in and helped fix things, water pipes and whatever, broken sidewalks, you name it.
Right.
Fix up old buildings, and so not everybody in the town wanted to see. God damn it, this town's going to go away if them hippies come here. But there were a few of them, you know, and. I did tell you on one of the tapes about them tearing down the house here in the Gulch. When I don't know
Oh, yes.
the details of the story, but their house was on Gulch Road, and you can see it when you drive by. If you look on the left, you'll see the stairs are still there, I think. And the house was piled up for years on stickers down below. They at least piled it up on stickers
Now they tore it down. Why?
because they were hippies. And they were gone. Channel 10 came up and filmed it. You know, this is what I was told.
It was a sculpture, an art project.
Yeah, it was big news in Arizona. You know, Arizona then we're talking about was probably, I don't know, 1.75 million, maybe 2 at the most
Right.
people. And now that wouldn't even be half of Phoenix.
Yeah. So what was the shape of the water system when you took over as mayor?
The shape of the water system. Well, I'm just thinking. Maybe we should do if the water system isn't on one of the other two.
Let me check. Okay.
Maybe we should do a water system special.
Okay. All right. I will check when we go
Okay.
home. Well, so you're mayor of the town and you're doing well in business. Are you married at this time? And have any kids?
Uh,
Or you had a previous?
no, I was romantically inclined toward this lady that had 3 kids, Pat Jackson. She had 3 kids, and then we had 1, and then we had 4. And I'm not trying to think of when that started. We got divorced in 1983. Got married when Adam was 2. So we got married in 77.
Wow.
So we were married for 6 years, not that long.
Yeah. And where were you living?
Well, eventually we lived in that big yellow house up on Jerome Street, up on the top under the J.
Oh.
That was my house. That was the first house I ever bought. I bought it for $19,000.
Oh my God.
And
Was it livable? Or did
oh
you have
God,
to fix
yes.
it up?
No, I moved right in. It's Mr. Newby's house. That was his name, Mr. Newby.
Now that's not the one that got blown out through the middle with
No,
the flood.
that's
up
below
higher.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
The reason that one got blown out is because of the overflow from the pipe blew the top off and all the mud and rock and everything went through the house.
Okay.
That's why if you ever look at it, you can see that the lid's blown off of it. That's what happened.
Huh.
Got so much pressure it blew up.
Wow.
And it killed 2 guys that were working down from it.
No kidding.
Yeah, they were working in the down below it. Oh my God, you guys. Marcelina Umpey's husband. I don't know what his first name is. Umpey. It's Umpee.
Huh.
So she was an old timer. He was a miner here. But they were working down below the water. And so when they opened it up, the water came blasting through and blew them down through the storm drain system. Literally.
Oh my God.
And killed them.
What a way to go.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Well, it's just about 4 o'clock.
It is. It's 4 minutes until 4.
And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to review everything that we did. And I know the story well enough now that I'll be able to see where there's a hole. And then if you will, maybe I'll come back on a day that doesn't go as weird as this one did.
Yeah. Well, we could do just a water.
Yeah, let me make
story.
sure I got that because that's really important.
It is important. The water system is very important.
Yes,
One of the most important things
absolutely.
in the town. I mean, it's the backbone of the town.
Indeed it is.
No water, no town.
That's right.
And that's right. Nobody
All
would
right.
be living here if there wasn't any water.
Well, let's say bye for now.
Okie doke. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Bifurcation. Sometimes when I watch MSNBC, which I'm going to do after you leave,